All right, we all got to do it together. 1, 2, 3. Hello, Reject Nation. John, you messed it up. What was he going to say?
What were you saying? Where were you going with it?
I thought it was what's your favorite scary movie?
We rehearsed it beforehand. Why do you think we and I were on the same page? We said hello.
Hello?
Guys, we're here at Cinemark today. So yeah, we just saw the new Scream movie at Cinemark, and it's really great to be here. I mean this sincerely because I rewatched the Scream movies over the past week, and Scream is my favorite horror movie franchise. I've said that so many times. To be at the theaters, and I've only seen one Scream movie in the theaters, which was Scream 4, to be back, I'm like, wow, we're watching Scream on the big screen. So if you guys are interested in checking this movie out, it is the way to experience it with the sound design, the scope. It's really awesome experience. So thank you, Cinemark, for having us here. This movie, to me, you know, as much as we talk about like comic book movies and all that, this is actually one of my most anticipated movies. You guys have no idea how much I've like dissected this and been like, I really want to see this movie. So there's a lot to talk about with this film. You know, obviously it's a Scream movie, so we got to talk about the meta commentary. We got to talk about the kills. We got to talk about legacy characters returning. We got to talk about the new characters. We got to talk about how we feel overall about the structure of the plot, some twists and turns without spoiling anything, which is going to be really challenging, but I'm going to be very careful about that because literally in the first like 15 to 20 minutes of this movie, there was a moment that happened. I'm like, oh shit. It's, like, we're already here. We're already in spoiler territory. Like,
yes,
this is spoilery right here.
Movie?
Yeah.
What are you doing? See it quickly because you don't want to know anything. I stopped watching trailers. I wanted to experience this. I would recommend seeing it as quickly as possible because it's a whodunit. You want a whodunit.
I think what this movie did an exceptional job at doing was really making it not feel like a cash grab. Of course, it has the self-awareness, but they do such a great job at the meta commentary, justifying its existence here. And honestly, with the way they do the handling of the commentary, this franchise has been Wes Craven's franchise and Kevin Williamson as well. And I think they'd be really proud of the way they handled the commentary and intersecting that with its characters as well with the whodunit.
I feel like this is a movie that exists in a world of commentary because the first Scream was very inventive in the fact that it was a commentary on other horror films while actively being a horror film. But we as a society has progressed in large part thanks to Scream in a lot of circles in that vein. So whereas recent franchises may have added a meta-modernistic take on in-fiction commentary and it not quite feeling as good, this having a meta-modernistic take in commentary works because those movies dealt with meta-modernism in regard to reality. This movie deals with meta-modernism in regard to in-universe reality. So whereas Scream has its series of rules, these rules are built on those rules, which allows a legacy, and it also allows us to kind of have like the Deadpool joke, like fourth wall break on fourth wall break, 16 walls. Yeah. This is an evolution of meta-modernistic commentary in a really lovely way.
Like, I know Scream 4 was dealing with it. This does it much better in dealing with soft reboots, dealing with requels. The way they handle that commentary, I was really impressed by it. I was like,
was so funny and so tight.
This is funny, and the way it's being mirrored in the movie is really well done. But John, what did you think about the movie?
I liked it overall. It isn't a perfect ride, but I think the things that are the most important for a large part, it does get right. It's a pretty brutal, not maybe the most brutal, but it feels brutal in the way that it's captured, just the amount of like stabs they're allowed to include.
And it's more intimate. It's more like there's something to the slow, there's something to the methodical, there's something to the way that's shot. Like, I love the directing of this film, and I really appreciate the fact that they let you kind of breathe in moments that I think other installments didn't.
Yeah, I think it gets brutal with the kills, but not in the way of like Halloween Kills does it, where I'm like, now this is just disturbing and I'm not having fun anymore.
While being much more brutal than I usually enjoy, I'm so invested in the characters and the humor and everything else, it hurts more, but I like it as opposed to certain horror movies where I'm like, bro, why am I here? Like, I'm just like upset. Like, it's not. Yes, this was nice.
You were telling me about it, like with the kills, of the way they stab here. It becomes comical in the way how it progresses in the franchise, where it's like this guy's just becoming a superhuman or a guy or a girl, but depending on which movie you're watching, right? Here, I'm like, this feels like a prison fight.
Yeah, it's really scrappy and very tangible. And one thing that they do, I think, excel at as well in this movie is letting the victim characters fight back in ways that feel, for the most part, pretty plausible.
And that's what I've always enjoyed about Scream is you've got your Jason Voorhees and your Mike Myers who are like these unstoppable forces. You don't have that same fear, whereas this, like, Scream gets knocked down and he gets up again. You're never going to keep him down.
Pissing the night away.
My main qualms with this will actually come down to, I'll save it in a second. All right. But John, who would you say out of the legacy returning characters? Obviously, we've seen divorced couple Courtney Cox and David Arquette coming back here, but they are on good terms, as you can tell in interviews. I really get the sense like you guys are on really good terms. I'm
really happy for
You're one
them.
of the best divorced couples I've ever seen in Hollywood.
Divorce goals.
Yeah,
am I right? Hey, that's a very realistic thing now.
They're great.
51%.
But in terms of the legacy characters, John, who I think all of us are agreeing to this, who would you say the highlight is?
Oh, it's got to be David Arquette. Surprise of all surprises. He really showed up for this movie, and he was one of the most touching and most, investable characters in the way that the movie adds flesh to him and treats him a little less like a joke, like acknowledges the kind of doofy aspects of Dewey, but at the same time, it gives him a little more credence than before, which was nice.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that because, like, Dewey, I mean, it's always like Sidney and Dewey. They're my favorites, right? Dewey, in this one, I was like, wow, David Arquette's really going for, like, that. He's really got the pathos here. And then when they set up his character, I don't want to ruin it. You expect a very, like, cliche thing that they would do between him and Gale, but they give a much richer complexity.
He's written like a person. He's not written like a
well, even the
Dewey
relationship
trope.
is written like there's a gray area.
Yeah.
Probably based off of the real life Courtney Cox and David
Well,
Arquette.
you also feel the passage of time with his character really beautifully.
Yes,
like
yes.
there's an old man Dewey. There's an old
Yes.
man Arquette to it all, which I really enjoyed.
But between the legacy characters, to me, Sidney Prescott, the Scream franchise has always been Sidney Prescott. Like Neve Campbell, is phenomenal to me, and pretty much like 3 out of 4 of these movies. Like she's still really great in Scream 3. I just don't like the writing of that movie so much. Neve Campbell's always been phenomenal and has really carried this franchise as the lead character, and it's always tied back in with her. And this is the one that's definitely the least about her. Neve Campbell's fine in this movie. That's all I'll say. Like I honestly ended up being like, I like her here because I fucking love Neve Campbell, and Sidney Prescott's my favorite. But when I look back on this film, I go, I feel like they could have really done this without her. I feel like she maybe like a cameo was fine, but I don't feel like she was ultimately necessary to be in this movie.
Without giving anything away, which I can't, there is things that I think, like in a spoiler review, were necessary, but I also understand where you're coming from, and I think that's the difference in our experience.
I felt like they could have given it to Gale.
I thought they were going to do that. And yeah, I mean, having both Gale and Sidney in this movie, like, it's very gratifying. I feel like everyone's trying to recreate the wallop of Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween 2018, which even Halloween Kills couldn't do. And a lot of other movies with these kinds of legacy characters couldn't do. And they don't quite get there here. Not that they're even necessarily trying to.
And then she's not, I don't want to say she's bad. Like, by no stretch is she bad. It just, I did feel like the legacy characters, other than Dewey, were kind of like, well, we need them in here because because
they're going to be part of the commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's necessary. We got to have our lovely the characters that we love.
And to switch to the newer characters, I feel like of the 5 films, I really liked this batch of the 4 sequels. Like, they really impressed me with the immediate likability, the charm, the overall gaggle of kids. Usually there's like 1 or 2 that you're like, This time I was really invested in almost all of them. I was like, oh, what a charming group of little troublemakers.
Most of this movie is focused on the new characters, whereas the other ones were really about like the legacy of Sidney Prescott and her past and resolving that and how it would tie back in. This is much more about new characters and a lot of spoilery things I can't get into. There's this character here. God, I'm trying to think of the trailer and how much they show, so I'm trying not to give it away. Just don't look it up. There's a character named Tara who's awesome in this movie. She's the best, in my opinion.
Tara's my favorite
Probably
character.
the best new character.
We should just leave it. We should just leave it at
Tara
that.
and Dewey, MVPs. Tara and Dewey, MVP. That's all you need to know. She's great.
Tara's amazing in here. Very, very believable. And then the other characters I think are likable. And Jack Quaid is really good in here. He's really funny. He's really great in this movie. My main issue with this is honestly the lead Samantha, whoever that actress is, and it pains me to say this because this franchise has rested so much on a powerful female character. Even with these directors doing Ready or Not, who created the Samara Weaving character, they know how to write characters who are feeling weak and vulnerable, who have to arc into strength. The writing wasn't the best, but really, I genuinely feel like her acting wasn't that good. Early on in the movie, she has a monologue, and it's a very dramatic, hefty monologue, and I really felt like I was watching a good audition. I was like aware. I didn't really feel for her. Not every scene she has falls flat for me, but more often than not, I couldn't believe her. And especially if you're stepping in for, after what Neve Campbell has done for 4 movies. Not that you're going to compare them necessarily. They're very different characters.
Well, it's the lightning in a bottle of all these slasher franchises that catch on is, I think, part of it, or a strong element a lot of them share is that, you have this lead lead who you can endear very heavily to and fall in love with and want to follow and root for. The lead in this I thought was decent, was pretty good, but it wasn't enough to really fully invest me and forget about the moviness of her character.
And for me, the ensemble was strong enough. It didn't distract for me as much, but I definitely found myself being like, where's blank? And it wasn't one blank. It was just enough blanks that I was like, oh, that might be a flaw.
What I don't think they really managed to do in terms of a requel was from the first movie of Scream. Like, even upon rewatching, I'm like, man, they really knocked it out of the park with getting these characters. They just nailed it. Like, man, I am so attached. It's not a nostalgia thing. It's like, no, I just love them. They're really well done. And I never quite felt that here for anyone of like, I like them, but that love didn't quite translate. Kind of with Tara, though.
I had it for Tara and I had it for Jack Quaid, but the fact that I can't remember his name doesn't bode well. They were Scream 1 level for me, but it's not the 6. Like, Scream 1 really just, how do you get that many lightning strikes?
Yeah, like, there were so many characters that just stood out. But then again, the movie has some great commentary about that with fandom that I'm like, crap, I'm one of these fans they're talking about right now.
That's right. Hey, there are certain things that are going to bite you on your way out of the theater.
This movie does some great things with talking about toxic fandom, and I found myself, like, I'm not like that really with like Marvel or DC, honestly, or Star Wars, but when it came to Scream, I was like, oh shit, they're kind of talking about me.
We all have a Scream, Greg. We all have a Scream.
These guys. Yeah, I did find myself doing that.
You're the killer of this one.
Yeah, there's some weird structure with here where, like, it's so hard to get into this, so I was spoiling. There was never a scene here where I truly felt tense. I was always engaged, but I never felt tension. And I felt that with Scream 1, 2, and 4. There's this great hospital scene in here that you see teased in the trailers. And that scene, like the way they execute all those elements and a lot of different physicality stuff, they do like some very different things we haven't seen done in the Scream movies yet. I love that sequence. Yet it was more from like an observational, admirational standpoint of like, wow, that's really clever. Oh, that's really cool. But I was never like, ooh, you know,
I was very tense. I was very tense for 90% of the movie. You? I was downright scared at
We're
points.
a little bit more used to horror.
I'm not so. So if you're like me and you avoid this stuff generally, I was like, I'm uncomfortable, and like I'm aware of that, but also desensitization. I actually screamed at twice. At 2 points, I yelped.
Some scenes fall a little too soap opera-y for me. That's a weird thing to say because if you look at the other Scream movies, like even Scream 1 and 2, there are like dramatic scenes, but there always felt like there was a life about them. Sometimes I felt like the energy of them would kind of really slow down with some soap opera sappiness. And there's this one specific choice with
you'll know it when you see it, believe me.
It's you know how Scream 3 had that thing with like Sidney's mom being a presence? They kind of do that with someone else, and it didn't quite work for me.
I think my biggest flaw for talking negatives is in the third act, you've got, your traditional mystery solved. The moment worked for me enough, but I definitely feel like it didn't work for me as well as other installments in this franchise. So I think my biggest issue is I was along for the ride. I was tense. I was laughing. I was scared. I was fully invested. And that moment wasn't like the, I needed it to be, but that doesn't drop it enough to be a lot less of a movie. It just kept it from that A. It's in that high B+ range for me because of that.
With it being a Scream movie, there's obviously going to be some twists and turns and reveals along the way. Some of it was well executed, even if it was predictable. I was kind of surprised by how a decent amount of it, even up until the end, was surprisingly predictable. And there was one big twist that was teased a lot on social media that, while I didn't actually see it coming, it didn't quite click for me fully. Here's the thing. What I don't want to miscommunicate, because you guys have seen us do enough talks by this point, where if I don't like something, I'm going to be very direct with you guys. And I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed it a lot. And this is a big mantle to take up. Like, this has been Wes Craven's franchise, and then very specific characters. And one thing that's made Scream unique is that it's not just having one character come back. It's been having 3 characters, and the presence of Randy exists through the franchise. Can't say that about many horror franchises. It's usually just like the killer who's the standout. So to take on this mantle, do something new, do something different, I really gotta commend the directors and writers for this, because I think they knocked it out of the park when you're dealing with taking this on. And
this could have been so much worse.
And then even like calling it Scream, it hit me like 30 minutes in with their commentary. Like, they never say it in the movie, but I was like, that's why it's called Scream.
Yeah.
And not Scream 5. Like, they did such a good job job at justifying that because that's always seemed weird to me. Like, why not just call the Scream 5?
Yeah.
And then I'm watching, I'm like, oh.
It's interesting to have a title make sense in the movie in a sequel to a series of movies.
Because it is a sequel.
What's
ultimately.
this about? Scream.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it, and there's plenty of fun to be had in here. And yeah, I'd say like a good B+ to me. I would say like a solid like 7.5 out of 10 for me. Yeah.
Sure, I'll go with
Yeah,
you guys. Yeah,
We go
B+.
8.2.
Could be a little more centered, could be a little more streamlined in certain ways, or maybe a little more fleshed, but ultimately it gets a lot of stuff right.
Yeah, it's like I like it way more than Scream 3.
It was so fun. Like, I really enjoyed the journey.
Well, that's our thoughts on Scream coming right out of the theater.
It's hard not to spoil. I've been very tense this whole time, the last few minutes. I'm like, I don't want to say anything.
Am I communicating anything here? Guys, Scream. Did you only watch the first 2 minutes of this video? Whatever, screw you. Subscribe, click that bell. Thanks, Coy, for being here. Watching the equipment while we had to run to Target to get a tripod. That's a true story.
Made a TikTok.
And, John.
I'm here.
See you guys soon. Thanks, Cinemark.